right, you guys. So today we're gonna go ahead and finish up the piece that we started off working with in the last session. I know it's a little later than usual because my wife wasn't still doing all that well after the surgery. So I still had to be with my kids for a big period of time. But today things are looking good. She's doing a lot better. So we'll go ahead and continue. There's a little splatter. It looks like to be some sort of oil paint that happened here. That's okay. That area is a little darker, so I'm still gonna have to build up the darker values there. So if I get something like that, you know, it's not such a big deal. But I did notice that when I opened the paper. So there's a lot of things that I'm using around here. It could have been anything from oil to just some water, just something that's mushed on there. But it's there, so it's we're just gonna try to work with it. Okay. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna try to do the color that will separate my dark for the skin. So in this case, I'm gonna use umber, okay? And it's not just gonna be umber, by the way. It's gonna be umber plus. It's gonna be umber plus yellows to give us greens. It's gonna be umber plus reds to give us deeper reds, okay? But we have to start with a foundation, and my foundation here is just gonna be my umber color, okay? And I'm mostly gonna use it just where I have my darker tones, okay? So I'm gonna just do a little bit more of a contour here. Remember, this is a study page. I wanna treat it like if I could finish this in a few minutes, not if I'm gonna take days and days with this drawing. So I wanna make sure that I block my areas that I'm gonna use my umber with and really, really go to town with them, okay? So this looks fine right here. So I'm gonna start just gently right here. I'm just gonna just gently start hatching in my umber color, okay? And the color that I have is just pretty much a brown. You guys could have different colors for this. There's burnt umber, there's raw umber, there's burnt sienna, there's just pretty much the raw just tells you that it's in a brown family, okay? So here we go. I'm just gonna do just gentle fining of color. And remember, this is me always leaving my hatching line, because I'm always nagging about leaving your hatching line, leaving your hatching line, leaving your hatching line, leaving your hatching line. So I'm just doing that at this point, okay? Just leaving my hatching line. Right. And again, we'll use more colors than just this umber. It's just, this is the color that we're starting with. I'm also gonna start with my whites pretty soon. So the midtones are the more complex colors. The highlights and my shadows are not that complicated. Mostly because they have very dramatic colors. So they have excessive amounts of either whites, or they have excessive amounts of neutrals, which in this case is a brown. So again, that makes my shadows and my highlights pretty doable. I'm changing here the direction of the hatching. That way when my eye sees this, it actually sees things go this way, things go this way, and things go that way, and things go that way, okay? You guys always remember that hatching works on two axes. It works on a vertical axis and it works on a horizontal axis. Right now, I'm trying to work my horizontal axis on the arm. Later on, I will probably work my vertical axis on the arm. Remember, break your contour line and try to just work that hatching. There's already some of that graphite that's gonna help out the drawing, by the way. The graphite is gonna help already identify, or it is already identifying my big darks and my big lights, okay? So that's good. The face is looking kind of funky, but we'll try to see if we could fix it with white, okay? Right now it is what it is, but we'll see if white will actually help it out a bit. For my fingers, you want to make sure that you do not trace the fingers all the way. Only trace the implied shadows on the fingers that are very visible. For example, between the pinky and the finger doesn't work for anything, this one here, there's no visible line, so I'm not going to try to make things if I cannot see things, okay? But between the index and the middle and the thumb and the index, I do see shadows, so I will go ahead and I'll put them on those. But remember, don't make things if you guys don't see things, okay? That's really important because sometimes we don't see something and we still make the lines for it, and it makes it look very, very obvious. So here, there's supposed to be 2 fingers. Again, the shadow is so subtle though, I'm only gonna make 4 fingers, and I'm gonna let the brain imply the other ones. Okay, then finally I'm just gonna go over here, trace, 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 okay. Imply broken line, very loose, riz, everything, okay? There we go. So now, I'm gonna go ahead and do my same thing. And here we go. All right, so the part is out of the way. Now we could go into the whites, okay? This is essentially what's gonna happen to the whole picture. So if you guys, once I do this part, if I start just doing steps without really mentioning what I'm doing, this is essentially what I'm doing on all the steps. Okay. So I'm finding the highlights, okay? And the highlights are not both the back and the front. They're just the front, okay? And remember, you could use the white on some places. You just don't have to use it as heavy as all places. For example, the light here to me looks a lot heavier than the light there, okay? The light here looks heavier than the light there. So even though I could use the light in many places, I don't have to always use it equally as heavy. Don't forget, pretty much at different intensities. So right now, I didn't do much work except just break my big lights from my big darks. We're now gonna start doing some pinks just to start getting into some of the skin tones, okay? So you could use 2 sets of colors. I'm gonna use my pinks for my transitions onto the light, and then I'm gonna use some reds for my transitions in the dark, okay? So, like for example, right here, I'm just gonna go ahead. Let's see some color pencils. I know I was gonna use them last time. They're not a big deal if I don't have them, but last time I had like raw umber and other color pencils, so it's okay. If I don't have them, that's fine. So now what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna start using some extra colors. And I could use the white, or I just had a white right here. I could use the white over some of these lighter areas. So the color pencil light, it's a little different. It's a little waxier. All right, you guys just have to remember that. It's just a little wax here. All right. So I'm just using my pinks here. Then I'm gonna start using a little bit of darks if you guys can. Remember, just keep on building your darks. That's the thing with dark values. It's a matter of buildups. You always will hear, I mean, it's like a never ending story. It's a matter of buildups, not of rushing. I wanna show the hairline now. So at this point, I'm gonna go a little bit more dramatic. And I'm also using, don't forget, I'm also using the brown of the paper, okay? That's a really important color that I have not stopped using. The brown of my paper kind of works as a mid-tone. If I wasn't using the brown on my paper, it makes it pointless to really use a tone paper. I could have just used white paper, but if I'm trying to use those transitions, so I'm trying to use these colors here, the white of the paper is of utter importance. All right. So I'm gonna, his eye socket is not this dark, but I am gonna darken it a little bit just to separate it from that splatter of oil that happened here, because if not, the eye is gonna be way too lost. Okay, and I'm gonna see if I could use a tad bit of white just to lighten up. Oh, sorry, let me use the waxier white. Just to lighten this surface right here. I'm not trying to over lighten either, okay? Just don't over lighten. There are transitions. There are transitions. That splatter on the face is just gonna bother me forever and ever, but I'm not gonna change much on it. I mean, as long as you guys don't have that splatter on the face, you guys don't have to worry about much. I already have it, so there's not much I can do after that. So I'm gonna start doing just transitions here, just ever so subtle. Just transitions, just transitions. Don't forget, you guys could also do darker values. I'm not gonna try to use a lot of, I'm gonna try to use a lot of, what do you call it, a black. I'm gonna just keep it with my browns as my blacks. For some drawings, the black would definitely neutralize it. So if you guys were trying to do more realistic stuff, the black would definitely be a big plus. But if you guys are just trying to do studies, remember, this is a study. It's not a really render piece. It's not a piece that's gonna take days and days and days. It's a piece that should take hours. If you guys do this with a wash, like a watercolor wash, this step is super fun, super fast. I could probably do this guy like in 15, 20 minutes, and I could probably do him plein air. Plein air is just me going outside, okay? But he's not super fast. He is a little slower just because we're using charcoal, or sorry, because we're using colored pencil, but I still want to get that feeling like if he was done extremely, extremely fast. It's not just what you guys do, it's how you guys do it, how you guys approach it, okay? Approaching things is really, really important. And I'm trying to build up. This approach would work, like even if I introduced the black, which I probably shouldn't do because I don't want to use it anymore, I could still build up my values, and that's the most important thing. The worst thing we can do is like, all right, I'm gonna go straight into black. And that's not the worst thing. That is the worst thing if you guys want to do some sort of realism, okay? If you guys want to build up layers and do realistic stuff, building up is that's like the quintessential thing of color, you know, how to build up your color. If we're focused mostly on doing things quickly, and in our head, things quickly means things out of order, you'll soon find out that that pretty much stagnates your drawing and it makes it last forever. Well, I'm going to use a little black just for the watch because it is gray. It is, you know, everything black. Different black families. Alright. So now, by the way, most of the color that I'm doing is the mid-tone. For example, when I do the color on the shirt, I'm mostly going to use the two blues, the purple blue and the cerulean blue. Later on, we could use white on top, okay? The trousers over here, or the pants, whatever you call them, they mostly have this brown to it, okay? All right, this pants should have been coming from back over here, actually. We flat here, open up, close, and in, okay? And now from this point onwards, this one I'm gonna try to do more of a gestural drawing here. So don't forget, a gesture drawing is a drawing that has a lot of information, but it's mostly loose, okay? I'm not doing a contour drawing right here in the bottom. That way when the viewer sees the picture, the eye just kind of fades away from the picture. If I were doing a contour line everywhere, the viewer doesn't have a focal point, okay? And I wish the focal point could have been the face, because I did like the drawing of the face, but now with a little kind of funky looking thing that happened, we'll call it the thing, I don't want to make the face a focal point either. I see hints of red, so I'm adding some reds into my browns. And eventually I will add black here, because it is dark enough for me to actually use black. If not, the hand is gonna get lost. And if I see more browns, now I start doing more browns in transition. Even do some lights. There's grays. So the white will not make it light anymore, but it will definitely make it gray. Okay, that looks pretty good. And finally, we are gonna go into the blues. So when I say finally, it's a weird kind of finally, because the picture is not gonna be done until we build it up. So it's a finally of build-ups, all right? So let's put it that way. It's a surreal finally. All right, so for my light areas, to keep this loose, for my light areas, I am gonna use my cerulean blue. But I'm not gonna press too heavy, okay? It's mostly white, in all honesty. I'm always gonna merge it into my shadows because this color is so light, it doesn't matter if it goes into my shadows. Later on, the shadow color will actually kill this color pretty much. We'll call this drawing the spot on the face. Conceptual piece. See, we just made high art. All right, so now I'm gonna go with my French ultramarine blue here. So here we go. So now, don't forget, change the direction of your strokes whatever feels better for your drawing. Just blocking, I'm just blocking, that's all I'm doing. This is a backpack, so I mean, we could tackle that in a second. And remember, you guys, these study pages could really be anybody, and recommended, I would say somebody real, somebody that you're actually studying from the park, from your friends, okay? But study pages are really important when it comes to becoming better. So this is kind of a weird thing. I mean, if you're going into art school, they're like super important. But if you are gonna be like a art major in some way or another, if you guys are going to be doing animation or illustration, or these are like what your time will be consumed in, okay? It's not so much the final end result. Somebody closer to an engineer would be doing that work for you, The artist is the creator of the imagery. So you don't have to be thinking about, ooh, how do I make this in 3D? Or, you know, there are some really, really good computer savvy people, and they actually do the work for you when it comes to putting it into a computer. But the creative part of storyboarding, not the creative part of mechanical work, because that's also creative, but the creative part of storyboarding and all that stuff is done through the fine artist. Okay, that's the more of the directing job or so forth. A lot of product design is done through the fine artists. They're just later on, once you guys do enough of them, then an engineer will come in and give it the logical stuff, you know, the computer savviness stuff. So yeah, so some people sometimes get carried away, like, ooh, how do I make this into a software of design? The softwares that I do recommend for artists, they would be more like what do you call them, like a Procreator. There would be more like Photoshop, or there would be more like Illustrator. But actual animating of characters, that's mostly done through a different group. Okay, that's done through more of a engineer based group. Some artists are phenomenal at understanding other people's work and doing it on, you know, social, like these kind of like more engineer based mediums. And some people are really good at creating, but they don't necessarily need to spend the time in the medium itself. And some people just like to learn, and the people that like to learn, you know, that's really great too, that you don't have to do any of this stuff, but people just want to learn how to do rendered animation. Okay, that's really important, you know. But when it comes to art, these pieces of study, this is what most artists actually do most of their time. They don't crack masterpiece after masterpiece after masterpiece after masterpiece. They actually just study a lot. Okay, then mostly there's a few masterpieces that people crack that make a big dent in society or a big deal in society, and then after that they start becoming more well known for a specific style. They start becoming more well known for, you know, something else, or something that they're doing. But a lot of, if you guys go like into Procreate, a lot of the famous Procreate artists, they're not animating stuff, they're just creating stuff. Okay, so just remember, if you guys like to do studies like this, you probably will be the creator of content. But if you guys need, you know, it's like being a writer versus being somebody that corrects writing. You know, they both have their journey and they both have their purpose. But one of them writes, and one of my uncles, he's a writer, and he's not, I guess, when it comes to like the actual grammatical part, he's not bad at all. He's really good, but he's not the best. Okay, his thing is kind of writing a books and not really correcting his spelling. Let's put it that way. Right. And it so happens, like my brother's father-in-law, a lot of people in that side of my family are in the educational field, and they're in the book field. But like my brother's godfather, he's the director of an editorial in Mexico City, and his point is mostly the figuring out what's right and what's wrong in terms of literature and so forth. What's misspelled, what's mispronounced, what's missed something, and he is the other flip of the coin. So he'll be the guy in the art that would be doing the actual illustration, you know, while somebody will be doing the art. And they're both phenomenal. They're both different, but they're both just a whole different animal. Okay. All right. So the clothing is not hard, by the way. It just it's time consuming, I guess you could say that, you put in those words, but it's not difficult at all. All right. So even here, if the sitter left, let's say he's like a real person just hanging out, and this person left, even here, I'm able to finish the drawing just using the logic steps of volume. Okay, so I could just start finishing the drawing just by using volumes. Like, okay, here I know I should have a heavier cast shadow next to my light because it's opposite of light. So we know that will already give us some of our darker values. We always know that we should be looking for our dark values next to our light values. So little by little, we could be pinpointing where we need our shadows to be. Here I'm using a lot more black, graying down my blue, but nothing is set in stone here. When I do stuff like this, I still need to come back and transition into blue, because if not, if the midtone is black, don't forget that our clothing is black. If our midtone is blue, then our clothing is blue. Everything depends on the color of your midtone when it comes to the color that you want, okay? So yeah, so right here, if I like the black, but all of a sudden everything feels black and it doesn't feel blue, then I have to come back and work some of my magic, or we'll call it some of the blue. Yeah. It's not magic. Well, in a way, classical work is magic. We're trying to fool the eye into believing something is dimensional when in all reality, we know it's not, because it's made on a two-dimensional plane. That is classical, okay? Because contemporary or modern art has nothing to do with the binding of the old, of trying to make things have dimension and so forth. So yeah, that's strictly classical. We become magicians and try to fool the eye. So one thing I have to start introducing pretty soon too needs to be my white, okay? Because my highlights are there, you know, they are highlighty-ish like, but they're not really highlights, okay? And I cannot do anything until I start introducing my lights. And almost there. I just have to make this backside a little darker. So here we go. So now I have introduced most of my darks, most of my lights. I didn't do much on the little lunch pack. You guys could do something very fun and gestural back there, like just throw in a few lines, you know, just kind of block in if you guys want. Okay, but the backpack, it's just the backpack. I mean, you guys, if I were gonna study this is probably like one of the things that I do the quickest, just to get out of the way. Okay, but once I have this good stuff, then I'd be able to use my white, all right? And I'd be able to use my transitional blue. Once you guys use these colors, You guys could also later figure out what is missing. Like, okay, this area is way too dark, way too neutral dark. I have to introduce more blue. Continue your hatching everywhere, and we should be okay with our picture. Artists would at this point also introduce something in the background. You know, don't keep the background plain. Don't make it too busy either. So if just introducing some lights and some grays are enough, then we said the magical words, some lights and some grays are enough. Just to break atmospheres. All right. More gestural down here. And then you guys could just go into your grays, or let's do some fun grays. Just keep families, okay? So if you guys are doing all kinds of browns and yellows, make sure that all the browns and yellows are symmetrical. And that's said and done. I think we should be pretty good with our study page. Again, I was kind of disappointed with splatter on the face. That, to be honest with you, kind of like kind of quieted me down a bit. And all right. All right, you guys. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up right now. And I'm gonna try to just unite this a little bit. When I see it from far, it feels a little disconnected. So I'm gonna try to do this with my black and my blue, okay? My dark black and my black is black. But my blue and my dark blue and my black. There we go. So I'm gonna try to make the dark side darker. And just make things more cohesive. And that black is doing most of that work for me. And now the darks are more in their dark family, the lights are more in their lighter family, and we could have a much more cohesive family. Sometimes if I want to bring some light, you could go straight into the white, or you could also go into your kneaded eraser and subtract some values. It'll push it back to the paper, so you'll definitely get a little lighter. And those are sometimes more of the highlights that you need instead of those dramatic ones, because those are actually midtones right here. All right. And all right. And I think we got it. All right, guys. Well, have fun with this. Don't put oil on the face. Make sure the face is a little bit more taken care of than mine. And this would be a great study page for any sort of traditional or applications that you guys can do for schools or work or any of that sort. And this is the kind of practice that we should be doing on a regular basis. Not drawing masterpieces or this and that. Drawing things that will lead us to bigger things, but then those bigger things get boring, and then we go back to these kind of experimental exploring phases, which I, as an artist, believe you grow a lot more from than just full-on masterpieces. Masterpieces, they speak patience of ourselves, but they sometimes don't say much more than that, okay? And studies show confidence. All right, you guys, well, have fun. Ignore the splatter on the face, and you guys should be good with a nice study page, all right? Take care, you guys. Bye-bye.